one thing that we want to kind of talk about is our need for our aldermen to use their power. You have aldermen that has the power for zoning changes. You have aldermen that have the power to say what happened in our communities. And we have one alderman that seems to don't get the message or haven't gotten the message. And we will deliver the message. We will deliver the message. It's total disrespect that we would ask a particular alderman to come out and support our cause. Our cause is not only about Lathrop, it's about public housing across this city. I would urge those that have tweets, Facebook, phone call, email, to let this particular alderman know we are totally dissatisfied with your non-support, as it appears to be. It may be support, but we just don't see it, if you know what I mean. So we want our alderman to use the power that is given to him through the election process to honor what we would like as citizens of this city and as public house residents. It don't have to be public housing residents. It can go anywhere. It's housing, period. Housing, 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 housing. With that being said and understood, we would now call Lisette, and she would talk about the struggle.
Sorry, I can't do the stand. I'm like 5'2". Lathrop's struggle is our struggle. If you know someone who's living doubled up or tripled up, then you know why Lathrop's struggle is our struggle. If you look at your paycheck every couple of weeks, every month, however often you get paid, and all you can feel like you can do is like hope that the federal government is using your tax money well, then Lathrop's struggle is your struggle. If you think about a day like today when it's super cold and all you feel like you can do is hope that somebody has a warm place to sleep tonight, then you know why Lathrop's struggle is our struggle. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're here because you're worried about your tax money not being at work, or if because you know somebody, or because it's the right thing. At the end of the day, we have to remember that we are all one community, and that is why Lathrop's struggle is our struggle. Because Lathrop's struggle is not just a struggle for housing, it's not just a struggle for public housing, it's not just a struggle against some high-rise tower they're trying to put in the corner, it's a struggle for justice. And that's the struggle that we all have to be a part of. Lathrop's struggle is all of our struggle. That being said, we do have some special guests we need to recognize. We will start with Alderman Scott Wagasback is here tonight. We clearly cannot say that without recognizing that somebody else is not here tonight. Alderman Joe Moreno had committed to come. November 7th, he had committed to be here. And yesterday, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he was like, yeah, no. And you know what? We've got a message for him tonight. We also do have someone representing the Chicago Housing Authority tonight, CHA, and that is Tim Veenstra. Carol Steele from the Vice President of the Central Advisory Council, Carol Steele. We also have some people confirmed tonight that I don't know if everybody's made it quite yet, but Cook County Commissioner Edwin Reyes will be here. I don't think he's here yet. Francine Washington, the President of the Central Advisory Council. Is Francine here? We saw Carol. I don't think we've seen Francine yet. Crystal Overton of the Office of Congressman Danny Davis, and Ben Gold from the Office of Representative Tony Barrios will also be with us tonight.
At this time, the co-chairs would like to thank our alderman, one alderman at this point, for supporting the community housing plan. It's a platform of proposals for the city of Chicago next 5-year plan for affordable housing. The 5-year plan shapes how the city allocates its funds, whether from federal, state, or local sources for affordable housing. Alderman Wagerspack circulated a letter of support among aldermen that now has 20 of Chicago aldermen signed on. Over the past 13 years, the city allocated more than $500 million for the CHA for its mixed income developments. But the projects supported by these funds delivered less than half. Think about that. Representative Lab in the replacement housing units, they promised, but creating a net loss of more than 16,000 low-income units. If the community housing plan is adopted, the city would only fund CHA development work that preserve existing public housing units or replace public housing units on a one-for-one basis. That is what we're asking for. We have a personal testimony that's going to come from Ms. Mary Nelson from the One North Side. She's stuck on the waiting list. Mary Nelson, please.
Good evening. My name is Mary Nelson, and I am a leader with One North Side. I am a resident of Myra's Place, a transitional housing program serving 30 women who are homeless and on the wait list just like me. I became homeless in 2011 because I became sick and I couldn't go to work like I had been, and I was struggling to pay my rent, and I soon lost my home. I am not the only person struggling today. There is a growing gap between low wages and high rent. So many of us are just a paycheck or an illness from finding ourselves in my shoes. This growing gap between real incomes and real rents is putting the squeeze on more and more families. There is a real need for affordable housing, especially on the north side. That is why public housing like Lathrop Homes is so precious. Let us reserve it. It angers me that people like me are not seen as a priority in our city. People on the CHA waiting list and suffer and go homeless year after year. I believe that everyone deserves a place to call home, and I am not going to accept no. am not going to accept no when the sources clearly exist that are not being used to meet our needs. We need CHA to rehab Lathrop Homes, not demolish, and build one-to-one units and lease up the vacant units. We need CHA to preserve our Lathrop Homes for its current residents and for people like me on the waiting list. Thank you for listening, and who is with me? Yay!
Thank you so very much for that, Mary. So we are going to get started with involving our present alderman with some questions. We have some questions when it comes to all of this stuff. So we're going to start with 3 questions. Each of the questions will be asked, and then the alderman will have an opportunity for a yes or no answer. At the end of the whole section, then the alderman will have an opportunity to expand upon the more thoughts around the questions. So as long as we're all okay? Yeah, right? Then, so we'll go with our first question.
Okay, my name is Daniel Espada. I'm a member of New Community Covenant Church here in Logan Square and the second co-chair of the Housing and Land Use Committee for LSNA. Ladies and gentlemen, our communities are filled with neighbors like Mary who are stuck on long waiting lists for public housing. Committing to a one-for-one replacement of Lathrop Homes' 925 public housing units, including scattered site housings across the north side, would ensure a preservation of this invaluable resource. Unfortunately, the CHA has been non-committal and confused in their language on this matter, and the current master plan includes no firm commitment for one-for-one replacement of units. When the CHA says that the Lathrop master plan will not include a commitment to replace the 525 public housing units that would be eliminated at Lathrop, it is in effect saying, we'll get to that later, making the replacement units a lower priority than market rate housing and retail at Lathrop. Alderman, the master plan must include a specific commitment to replace all 925 of Lathrop's public housing units so that any unit which is not replaced at Lathrop is replaced in the gentrifying neighborhoods around Lathrop Homes. Alderman Marguspak, will you make this a condition of your support for the master plan?
Yes.
Thank you. Alderman Moreno, will you make this a condition of your support for the master plan? Alderman? Let the record show Alderman Moreno is silent on this matter.
Alderman Moreno. We can't hear you.
Can you hear us?
Alderman Moreno. We can't hear you. We want to know, do you hear us, Alderman Moreno? We can't hear you. Do you hear us?
All of you have a green card and a red card as part of your packets. At any point, if any of the answers you hear tonight, if you do like the answer, you can go ahead and lift up the green card. If you don't like the answer, you can go ahead and lift up your red card. For our next question, we will call up Titus. It's your turn.
The master plan, it must not include market rate housing. Must not. If you look at the location of Lathrop, It has as much market rate housing than we need. Much. If you take a map and you surround Lathrop as in the square, and you go north, south, east, and west of Lathrop, there's plenty of market rate housing. Plenty. So, Alderman Wagerspack, we'd like to know, would you support this master plan not to include market rate housing?
I get to answer afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I definitely rather not.
Rather not support?
Not have market rate housing, but I'll discuss it later.
And for our third question of this section, Carol Anderson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to see everyone here. Thank you. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I'm Carol Anderson. I've been a longtime resident of Lathrop Homes. I've raised 5 out of 6 children at Lathrop Homes. I'm also a voter in the 1st Ward. I would just like to say, alderman to the aldermen, we do not need or want a high-rise in Lathrop Homes. The high-rise in the proposed master plan would be out of scale with the historic buildings and the landscape of the Lathrop Homes, which are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It would also be out of scale with the neighborhoods around Lathrop. It would set a precedent for high-rises to be developed along the Chicago River. The developers said the high-rise would be a mix of public housing, affordable housing, and market rate residents. But a federal judge has ordered that a public housing with children should not live above the 3rd floor of a high-rise building, making it impossible for a true economic mix. As we know that CHA allows developers to change their plans over time. Related Midwest, one of the partners in the Lathrop development team, is also involved with the CHA's Alba Homes. At that site, the plan also called for an economic mix in all buildings. But recently, the CHA approved the developer's request to build rental buildings that are 80% market rate. Anything like that at Lathrop would be a scandal. At the kickoff of the planning process in November 2011, Alderman Marino said not to worry, that there would be no high-rises in Lathrop Homes. Alderman, we want you to join us in calling on CHA to keep the Lathrop Homes entirely low-rise. Okay. Alderman Wasserpack, would you make this a condition of your support for the master plan?
As long as I can repeat my name, Wagerspack. Yes.
Wagerspack. Alderman Wagerspack.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Let's make it a little fun for you. Thank you, Carol.
Alderman Marino, can we still have your support to make this a condition for the master plan? I would assume that according to the kickoff plan in the master plan in November 2011, when Alderman Marino said not to worry, there would be no high-rises in Lathrop Homes, I would accept that that would still be a condition, that he would still join us in our support to keep Lathrop Homes entirely low-rise.
Alderman Moreno, can you hear us? Alderman Moreno, do you hear us? This response should be, do you hear us? Alderman Moreno, do you hear us? Alderman Moreno. Alderman Moreno.
Okay.
We will now
Thank
give
you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
We will now give Alderman Wagisback 2 minutes to respond to the first 3 questions.
Well, I can't respond in 2 minutes to all the questions, but I'll just say a couple things. First of all, as all of you might know, Lathrop Homes is in the 1st ward. Only a small portion is in the 32nd. But over the last few years, not just over the last 2, since 2008 when we saw the first plan, one of the first things that we said in my office looking at this was basically, we don't want a high rise. That was number 1. The density on the site is too great, and all the market housing that you want to jam in there is essentially right across the street, so we don't need that. Now, there is a little bit of an issue there, just to be honest with everyone. There are many neighborhood groups in the area, and the different neighborhood groups have a different idea about what they want to see at Lathrop Homes. But the one thing that I've stuck to as an alderman on this issue is that it would be much easier, it would be much less costly for the CHA to just go in, rehab the units, preserve them, and have 925 available units that they have neglected over the last 20 years, mothballed as people went out and raised their hands, just like they do a lot of things in the city. All across the city, there's a lot of issues that take place, not just Lathrop Homes, and people throw up their hands and say, we give up in this city, let them do whatever they want. The good thing about tonight is that there's a lot of people here, there's been a lot of people at the table saying, we need to do things differently. Lathrop Homes is one of those things out of many. And I expect everybody to start thinking differently in the city and looking differently at the way we do things. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't get angry when we ask questions and hold things up and say we need to do things in a way that's going to help people instead of hurting people anymore and hurting taxpayers. So I know I have 2 minutes. I have to end it there, but I can't cover everything tonight. I will let you know, if you haven't ever read the letter, in 2012, we sat down with LS&A and a lot of other folks that have been working on this and wrote a letter to the mayor, wrote a letter to the CHA head, Mr. Woodyard at the time, and we covered all those issues in that letter. So it's not too hard for me to go out and do something like that if we're all fighting for the right thing and the same thing. Thank you.
Before we move on to the next set of questions, the students from Alcott High School have made something for us. One of the things that often gets lost in these moments when we talk about Lathrop is just how long this has been going on. This wasn't that like we started fighting this last year or 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. We've been fighting for over a decade to preserve the Lathrop's residents' vision for their home. This is why we stand with them. This is when we say that Lathrop's struggle is our struggle, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about the right to not have to worry about your housing constantly for 13 years. This is what we're talking about. Anytime that someone mentions Lathrop to you, anytime that someone talks about Lathrop with you, you can let them know, yep, I know. Because you know what I also know? I know that this has been going on for far too long. This has been going on for far too long. Can you imagine having to worry about your housing every day for this long? Can we please stand and give a standing ovation to the residents of Lathrop Homes who have been living this day in and day out?
Here's, now, we like to thank Alcott School. Let's give Alcott a hand. Let's give Alcott a hand. Alcott, this room stands with you too. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you especially to their teacher. I know my teachers weren't that cool in high school to have like pointed this kind of stuff out to me, so that's awesome. So we're going to go back to our set of questions. Again, Alderman Wagasback will give just a yes or no answer to each question we have, and then he will have 2 minutes to respond to the next set of questions. For our first question of this round, we ask Talitha Jackson to come up.
Hello, my name. Hello, my name is Talitha Jackson. I'm also a resident of Lathrop Homes, also a voter in the first ward. Although the CHA development team presented their draft master plan in late July, they left many questions unanswered. One of those questions were, will they start
Renovating?
Sorry, y'all, I'm a little nervous. Renovation work where the buildings have already been vacant, but CHA development team has not informed the community about where they will begin. Begin work. If they begin on the south end of, if they begin work on the south end of Lathrop, it will displace many residents, more than half of Lathrop, including my family. But we already been forced to move in 2011 from the north side of Diversity to the south side, when all the residents were consolidated to the south. The revitalization should start north of Diversity while residents remain on south of Diversity. I can't pronounce your name right, so
Alderman, just an alderman.
I was just gonna.
Could you commit to us that you work with the master plan?
Yes.
And I want to say for Alderman Moreno, even though he's not here, he already committed to us that he was gonna be behind us. He is our alderman, so I'm not gonna, he did promise us he's gonna stick with us on this, and things happen. We don't know why he's not here, so we're not gonna treat him too bad. Thank you.
Now, we will have a question from Javier Barrios.
Hi, Alderman. Hi, my name is Javier Barrios. I've been a resident of Lathrop Homes for 45 years. And my mother, Virginia Barrios, we moved there in 1968. It was a beautiful neighborhood then, and it's a beautiful neighborhood now. The CHA appears to be allowing Lathrop's heat and hot water system to decay. In 2012, a CHA executive told Lathrop residents that during the revitalization, our utilities might stop working or it might be unsafe for us to remain on site. This year, we have experienced a number of short-term water and gas shutoffs. We are concerned that the CHA could continue to allow Lathrop's system to deteriorate and then suddenly announce that it has to move residents out for our own safety. Alderman, we need your support to ensure that the CHA will not let its neglect of Lathrop become an excuse to displace the residents. The CHA should release a plan within the next 6 months showing how it will repair and maintain Lathrop's system and utilities to maintain stable housing for the current residents during the revitalization. Okay. First, I'll ask Alderman Loco Joe Moreno. He's not here.
Do you hear us, Alderman Moreno?
Okay, Alderman Wagispack, will you make this a condition of your support for the Lathrop Master Plan?
Yes.
And for our last question, Mr. Bobby Watkins.
Bobby?
Good evening, Alderman Watkins back. My name is Bobby Watkins, and I'm a resident of Lathrop Homes and also a voter in the First Ward. The CHA says that current residents who follow our current lease rules will be subject to new lease restrictions before we can be moved into a revitalized unit at Lathrop. If this policy remains in place, it can mean that some of our current residents won't be able to live at Lathrop, despite their best efforts to remain there for all these years because of new restrictions that the CHA won't even decide on for several more years. Alderman, we want the CHA to pledge that it will grandfather current residents who are in good standings into the revitalized units without adding any additional lease restrictions. Alderman Moreno, will you make this condition and support Lathrop for the master plan?
Alderman Moreno, we can't hear you. Alderman Moreno, we can't hear you.
Alderman Wagispack, will you make this a condition of your support for the Lathrop master plan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Alderman Wagisback, you have 2 minutes to respond to those questions.
Rehab of the vacant area, the no displacement by neglect, and the lease restrictions all work together. So we've had discussions with the residents, and just so you know, we've had several meetings with a lot of the residents and with the working group. There's different organizations or different groups that represent different aspects of this, but for each one of these issues, it is something that we have been on the ground looking at, in particular the displacement by neglect. If you've been out there and you saw what they did with the rooftops, and they threw out some cheap tarps up there to kind of keep the stuff out during rain and snowstorms, that didn't really work. And that's what I was talking about before, about raising your hands up and letting things fall apart and then saying, gosh almighty, we can't do anything about that, so we have to sell it off to some developer or privatize it or whatever the asset is. This is an asset. This is an asset for our city, both historically and for the people who live there. And we have to make sure that we stop that trend of allowing things to break down and then telling people you have to move along and go somewhere else. So that's what.
All right, for the following set, we have 2 more questions, and we're going to start with Chuck Holgren.
Good evening. I'm Chuck Holgren. For the past 40 years, a very close neighbor of Lathrop Homes and a voter in the 32nd Ward. I'm quoting now from Preservation Chicago's 2013 Most Endangered Building List. During the depths of the Great Depression, the federal government assembled a dream team of the best and brightest architects from Chicago to design Lathrop Homes. This work was completed in 1938. Among the all-star architects was Robert S. DeGolyer, a designer of posh Lakeshore Drive high-rises. Another all-star architect was Hugh M.C. Gardner. He was a respected former practitioner of the old Chicago school, imparting a meld of modernism and livable traditionalism. Now, 76 years later, Preservation Chicago concludes that Lathrop Homes, placed in 2013 by the National Park Service on the National Register of Historic Places, is a viable, diverse urban community with structurally sound buildings. Alderman Waguespack, will you publicly call on CHA to require the master plan to preserve all of Lathrop's buildings? Will you make this a condition of your support for the master plan, yes or no?
I have called for it in the past, and I would like to see it in the master plan.
Alderman Moreno, will you publicly call on CHA to require the master plan to preserve all of Lathrop's buildings? Will you make this a condition of your support for the master plan, yes or no?
Alderman Moreno, we don't hear you. Alderman Moreno, we can't hear you. We have question 8, and we would like to call Barbara Burns. Give her a hand.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Jacobs Burns. I'm a former resident of Lathrop Homes, where my family lived for 16 years. And I am a former staff member of the Cotter Boys and Girls Club, although back in my day, it was just called Lathrop Chicago Boys Clubs. And the only way I could get in was by going and volunteering and then working there. But I knew where the boys were. Housing and youth services go hand in hand in any community. For over 50 years, the Boys and Girls Club has provided recreational and educational after-school programs, leadership development programs. We've had summer day camps and access to overnight camps, jobs. My first job was at Lathrop. And we have had access and opportunities for college scholarships for the youth of Lathrop and the surrounding communities. It's imperative that the programs and services at Cotter are up and running and that the club has a physical presence, a roof over its head during the transitional period of any master plan for that time and beyond. To that end, it's imperative that the CHA and the Lathrop community partners engage actively with the Boys and Girls Club of Chicago leadership to ensure the continuity of their programming during the transition and beyond. Alderman, we would like to have your support. Alderman Waguespack, will you make this a condition of your support for the Lathrop Master Plan?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Alderman Marino, will you make this a condition of your support for the master plan?
Alderman Moreno, we can't hear you.
Can you hear us?
Alderman Moreno, we can't hear you.
Can you hear us?
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Barbara. Alderman, you have 2 minutes.
Very quickly on the preservation of the buildings. When I first started looking at those buildings over a decade ago, I always thought they were pretty solid. And when I was able to go in and visit with some people and see what was in there and what kind of structures they were, I was still impressed by how solid they were. And one of the residents nearby brought some photos of the original construction to my office. And I don't know if you've seen them, but if you look at the way those things were built, those homes, they are rock solid when they were built, and they're still rock solid. Do they need treatment? Do they need repair, revitalization? Absolutely. But that's not something that is insurmountable. It's easily done. So yes, I believe in not only the buildings, but the layout of the site as well, with Jens Jensen and the way they laid out, the landscape architecture. Those are all issues that we brought to the table early on to make sure that we got to the Section 106 process and basically worked with the preservation people to say, what can we do here before we go too far down the path and allow the CHA to make more or bad decisions on top of bad decisions, which is seemingly what they do very well. On the Boys and Girls Club, the Mary Crane Center, those facilities that are there, we cannot disrupt those children's lives any more than they already have been. So we just have to make sure that the CHA doesn't just worry about the residents there, but about those kids as well. And we all know what can happen, especially with the young ones. When you upset their daily life, that really throws them for a loop. And so we need to make sure that's part of the plan. We're working with the different organizations to make sure that happens in the master plan.
And we have one final question, and that will be from Sally Heyman.
Good evening, everyone. It's really great to see you all here. Wish everybody was here who was supposed to be here. Really sorry about that. I just heard about it tonight when I got here. I've lived in Logan Square now for about close to 35 years. I'm just on the other side of the river from Lathrop Homes. I've walked by Lathrop Homes. I've biked by Lathrop Homes. I've even canoed down the river past Lathrop Homes. I've driven by it. I've always loved it. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And I want to see it stay the way it is now. Only fix it up. The great lawn, the green open spaces are beautiful. The buildings are beautiful. I am so disappointed in the plan that's being proposed. Just can't believe it. Iconic towers. Anyway, the reason I'm up here is to ask a question. I want to ask Alderman Wagaspak, will you promise to put all the commitments you've made tonight in writing to Mayor Emanuel, to the CHA, with copies to Congressman Quigley, Senator Durbin, and Senator Kirk?
Yes, I think we already started the draft. I said we already started the draft, so.
Great. Alderman Moreno, will you promise to put all the commitments in writing to Mayor Emanuel, the CHA, Congressman Quigley, Senator Durbin, and Senator Kirk?
Alderman Moreno, we can't hear you. Alderman Moreno, we can't hear you.
But I do hope he hears from every one of you that's here tonight.
I'm going to move just a little bit off the agenda, and I'm going to kind of piggyback on what Alderman Wagerspack has spoke of, and that is the broken promises. The broken promises are not just given to Lathrop. It has been given to Cabrini Green. It has been given to LeClaire Courts. It has been given to Stateway Gardens, Robert Taylor, Ida B. Wells, Henry Horner Homes, you name it. Broken promises. Broken promises. And we shall, as a group, as a community, as people, we let them know you're not breaking any more promises, not while we're standing here.
In order to ensure that there are no more broken promises, we have to stay committed and we have to remain in action. So to invite us to our next action is Pastor Bruce Ray.
I'm Pastor Bruce Ray. I'm from Kimball Avenue Church here in Logan Square, and we've stood with Lathrop residents for the past several years to support them in their quest to remain at Lathrop Homes. I'm also a part of a group called the Logan Square Ecumenical Alliance, a group of churches that are gathering to address issues in our community, and housing is one of those issues. Here we are in the middle of Advent. It is a time for us to reflect and consider the story of Jesus and his birth in Bethlehem. But that story begins with displacement. It begins with a government who says, you have to move. And Mary and Joseph had to leave Nazareth and go to Bethlehem. And when they got there, they had to search for a place to stay. And when they knocked on the door, every time they knocked on the door, it was closed to them. They finally found room in a stable. We are going to do what is called La Posada. La Posada is a Mexican custom that goes on procession with Mary and Joseph in search of housing. And we're going to do it at Lathrop Homes because we think there's been too much displacement. And we believe that there should be room at Lathrop Homes for a family that needs housing. And so we're going to go to Lathrop Homes with Mary and Joseph, and we're going to knock on some doors, and we're going to find out if there's room at the CHA Inn. But from the looks of things, it looks like the CHA Inn has been closed. But we're going to make sure together that they aren't going to close it without being noticed. We're going to show our support for housing at Lathrop Homes. Alderman Wagerspack, we would love to have you join us on December 21st from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. We are meeting at Cotter Boys and Girls Club. We will proceed with Mary and Joseph around the perimeter of Lathrop Homes, and we will knock on doors, and we would love for you to be there with us. Alderman Moreno, we would love to have Alderman Moreno with us too. We think that Alderman Moreno can come around, and maybe, just maybe, he will show up and open some doors for us. But we're going to use this opportunity to remind CHA and to remind each other how important it is to have secure, stable homes in Logan Square. Join us on December 21st, 2 p.m.
Nothing like this is ever complete without action. So please, please join us on December 21st at the Community Posada. We are very grateful for the fact that Alderman Wagerspack came and joined us tonight. However, it cannot go, and really hasn't, gone unnoticed that Alderman Moreno made a commitment to be here and then backed out. He has to know that we know. He has to know that each and every one of you know he was not here, because we were here and the alderman was not here to hear us. So, to that effect, we have banners, and there's someone holding the banner up in the back there, and it says, Alderman Moreno, we missed you at the meeting. We want everyone to sign the banner before they leave, and those of you who can, there are 3 buses going to Alderman Moreno's office right now, and we will be posting these at the door, because we want to make sure he knows we missed him at the meeting. So there are 3 buses going there. Once you are there, you can find your own way home, or for example, one of the buses can drop you off near the red line. Just check in with us. We can let you know, make sure you've got a ride. But please come join us as we put this at the door so we can make sure that you guys all know that your voices have been heard. Thank you guys all for being here tonight.